In modern Rome, there is a hill called Monte Testaccio that stands 115 feet tall and covers an area of 5 acres. It is not a natural formation of rock or soil, but an artificial mountain created entirely from trash specifically, the shattered remains of 53 million olive oil amphorae discarded by the ancient Romans. It is a monument to consumption so vast that it literally reshaped the topography of the eternal city. Welcome to dulled history. Tonight, we are digging into the grime and grit of the ancient world to answer a simple, disgusting question. What happened to the trash produced by a city of 1 million people before the invention of plastic bags or sanitation trucks? We are exploring the life of refuse in the Roman Empire, from the chamber pots beneath the beds to the great sewers that emptied into the Tiber. This is history you can smell, a journey into the unwashed reality of the past. Get comfortable, dim the lights, and prepare to walk the streets of the world's first true metropolis, where the ground beneath your feet is as likely to be broken pottery as it is stone. You open your eyes to the gray light of dawn, filtering through the single, small window of your third-floor apartment in the Subura district. The air in the room is heavy, thick with the trapped heat of the previous day and the human sense of the night. You are living in an insula, one of the towering, rickety apartment blocks that house the vast majority of Rome's population. The building groans softly as it wakes, a symphony of settling timber and shifting brick that never truly goes silent. Above you, the footsteps of the family on the 4th floor vibrate through the ceiling, dislodging a fine dust of plaster that drifts down into the shaft of morning light. You sit up on your straw-stuffed mattress, the rough wool blanket scratching against your skin, and swing your legs over the side of the bed. Your bare feet touch the cool, uneven floorboards, and you instinctively curl your toes. The room is sparse, a wooden chest for your tunic, a small tripod table, and in the corner, the object that dominates your immediate thoughts, the chamber pot. It sits there, a terracotta vessel with a wide rim and a heavy lid, containing the liquid and solid waste of the last 12 hours. This is the first logistical challenge of your day, a problem faced by hundreds of thousands of your neighbors simultaneously. You stand and stretch, your joints popping in the quiet room, and walk over to the window. Pushing open the wooden shutters, you are hit instantly by the roar of the city. Even at this early hour, Rome is deafening. The ban on wheeled carts during the daylight hours has just lifted, or rather, shifted. The heavy transport wagons that rumbled all night are clearing out, replaced by the shouting of hawkers, the braying of donkeys, and the clatter of wooden sandals on stone. But beneath the noise, there is the smell. It is a physical presence, a complex, layered stench that defines the city as much as the marble columns of the Forum. It is the scent of wood smoke, rancid garum sauce, unwashed bodies, rotting vegetables, and beneath it all, the sharp ammonia tang of urine and the sulfurous weight of excrement. You look down into the alleyway below. It is narrow, barely wide enough for 2 men to walk abreast, and shadowed by the overhanging balconies of the apartment blocks on either side. You glance at your chamber pot, then back at the window. There is a law, the Lex Aquilia, and subsequent Praetorian edicts that punish anyone who pours filth from a window if it injures a passerby. But you know, just as everyone in your building knows, that the law is often a distant abstraction when compared to the convenience of gravity. You scan the alley. It is relatively clear for a moment, save for a stray dog sniffing at a pile of refuse near the wall. You could risk it. A quick tilt, a splash, and the problem is gone, joining the slurry that already coats the paving stones. But this morning you hesitate. The landlord has been complaining about the stains on the exterior stucco, and the fine for hitting a citizen is steep. You resign yourself to the alternative, the long walk down. Picking up the heavy clay pot, you navigate the cluttered room and open your door into the hallway. The air here is darker and more stagnant than inside your apartment. The corridor is narrow, turning sharply toward the central staircase. You can hear the sounds of your neighbors engaging in the same morning ritual. A door creaks open down the hall, and an elderly woman emerges, carrying a bucket wrapped in a rag. You exchange a silent nod, a shared acknowledgement of the burden you both carry. The staircase is steep, the wooden steps worn smooth and slippery in the center by generations of feet. There is no handrail, only the rough plaster of the wall to steady yourself. You descend carefully, the weight of the waste sloshing slightly with every step, threatening to spill over the rim and onto your tunic. As you reach the 2nd floor, the smells of cooking begin to waft from the wealthier apartments. Here, the tenants can afford charcoal braziers and slaves to cook for them. You smell frying onions and the pungent, fishy aroma of liquamen, the fermented fish sauce that Romans put on nearly everything. It makes your stomach grow, a sharp reminder that you haven't eaten, but the task at hand takes precedence. You continue down, the stairs widening slightly as you reach the ground floor. Here, the building opens up into a small courtyard, cluttered with the tools and goods of the shops that occupy the street frontage. A carpenter is already at work, sawing a plank of pine, sawdust drifting through the air to mix with the dust. He doesn't look up as you pass, used to the parade of tenants ferrying their waste to the street. You step out of the insula and onto the via, the street. The transition is jarring. The light is brighter, the noise immediate and aggressive. You are standing in the subura, the beating, dirty heart of plebeian Rome. The street is paved with large, polygonal blocks of basalt, fitted together with impressive precision, but you can barely see the stone. A layer of filth coats the road, a mixture of mud, animal dung, kitchen scraps, and the contents of 1,000 chamber pots that were less cautious than yours. To help pedestrians navigate this muck, there are raised stepping stones placed at intervals across the street, allowing you to cross without sinking ankle deep into the sludge. But you aren't crossing yet. You are looking for the collection point. At the corner of the block, there is a large, open vat half buried in the ground. This is not a trash can in the modern sense. It is a specialized receptacle. A sign painted in red on the wall above it depicts a pair of fuller's cloth washers stomping on fabric in a tub. The vat is for urine. It is a valuable commodity in Rome. The ammonia content makes it an excellent bleaching agent for togas and tunics. You walk over to the vat. The smell is eye-watering, a concentrated punch of chemical sharpness. You carefully pour the liquid contents of your pot into the vat, contributing your liter to the textile industry. It is a strange economy of waste. Your body's refuse is the cleaning agent for the senator's robe. You empty the solids into a separate, foul-smelling dung heap adjacent to the alley, where stercorari, manure collectors, will eventually shovel it into carts to be sold as fertilizer to the farms outside the city walls. Nothing in Rome is wasted if a profit can be wrung from it. With the pot now empty, though still unwashed, you head to a public fountain on the corner to rinse it out. The water flows continuously from the mouth of a stone lion, splashing into a basin that is already crowded with people. There are women washing vegetables, children drinking from cupped hands, and other men rinsing their own vessels. The water is cold and clear, fed by the great aqueducts that bring the mountains to the city. You wait your turn, listening to the chatter. A man is complaining about the price of grain, while another recounts a fight that broke out in the tavern last night. You rinse your pot, scrubbing the interior with a handful of rough straw you grabbed from the ground, then splash water over your hands. It isn't sterilization, but it is the best you can do. You tuck the pot under your arm and head back up the stairs to drop it off before starting your day properly. Returning to the street minutes later, free of your burden, you begin to walk through the neighborhood. The sun is higher now, casting sharp shadows that cut across the graffiti-scarred walls. You are hungry, so you stop at a thermopolium, a cookshop built into the ground floor of a neighboring building. The counter is L-shaped, faced with colorful fragments of marble, and fitted with large terracotta jars sunk directly into the masonry to keep food warm. You pay a few copper asses for a chunk of bread and a small bowl of lentil stew. You stand at the counter to eat, watching the street life. The owner of the shop, a burly man with a stained apron, is cleaning up the remains of a previous customer's meal. He sweeps bones, olive pits, and crusts of bread off the counter and directly onto the floor. This is the standard disposal method for small trash. You look down at the floor of the shop and see a mosaic of debris. It isn't just laziness, it is an accepted part of the environment. In wealthy dining rooms, guests throw lobster shells, oyster shells, and chicken bones onto the floor to be swept up later by slaves. Here in the cheap eatery, the dogs handle the cleanup. A scruffy mongrel scuttles out from under a stool and crunches loudly on a pork bone. What the dogs don't eat will eventually be swept into the street, adding to the layer of compost that defines the road surface. You finish your meal, wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, and step back out into the flow of traffic. As you walk deeper into the city, the density of trash changes character. Near the vegetable market, the ground is slick with rotting cabbage leaves, smashed figs, and the entrails of fish. The smell here is sweet and cloying, the scent of decay accelerated by the Mediterranean heat. You step carefully, hopping from one dry patch of stone to another. To your left, you see a man arguing with an aedile. one of the officials responsible for street maintenance. The shopkeeper has piled a stack of broken crates and straw packing material too far into the street, blocking the path. The edile is gesturing angrily, threatening a fine. Rome has laws about keeping the streets clear, requiring property owners to clean the frontage of their buildings, but enforcement is sporadic and often depends on the mood of the official or the depth of the bribe. You pass a construction site where a new temple is being erected. The noise of hammers on stone is rhythmic and piercing, but it is the waste that catches your eye. Piles of marble chips, broken bricks, and excess mortar are heaped against the side of a building. In a modern city, this rubble would be hauled away to a landfill. In Rome, it often becomes part of the city itself. You watch as a laborer shovels a load of broken brick into a low spot in the road, tamping it down to fill a pothole. The city is built on layers of its own debris. If you were to dig down beneath your feet, you would find the crushed remains of the Republic, and beneath that, the kingdom, strata of trash and rubble compacting over centuries to raise the ground level of the city. The crowd thickens as you approach the forum. Here, the trash is different. It is less organic, more industrial. You see shards of pottery everywhere. An amphora, the standard shipping container of the ancient world, is a single-use item. Once the oil or wine inside is consumed, the jar is useless. It cannot be easily cleaned or reused because the porous clay absorbs the rancid oil, so it is smashed. You step over a jagged piece of a handle, stamped with the maker's mark from a workshop in distant Spain. It traveled hundreds of miles across the sea, survived storms and pirates, only to be shattered and left in a Roman gutter. This pottery waste is a plague on the city. It doesn't rot, it doesn't burn, and animals won't eat it. It just accumulates. You turn down a side street and see a cart illegally parked during the day being loaded with baskets of these shards. The driver is preparing to haul them to the designated dump sites on the outskirts. This is the origin of the Monte Testaxio you thought about earlier. It is an organized system of disposal, a state-run landfill dedicated solely to olive oil jars. The broken pots are not just thrown in a pile. They are stacked, packed with lime to neutralize the smell of rancid oil, and carefully engineered to ensure the stability of the growing hill. It is a marvel of engineering applied to garbage. Your path takes you past a fulanica, a laundry business. The smell hits you before you see it, the same sharp ammonia stench of the urine vats but magnified tenfold. Inside the open front of the shop, you see men standing in tub-like depressions, stomping rhythmically on clothes submerged in a mixture of water, fuller's earth, and stale urine. They are the human washing machines of Rome. The urine you donated earlier might well be in that tub. It is a dirty, despised job, yet essential. The whiteness of a candidate's toga candida, the symbol of his purity and fitness for office, is achieved through the chemical power of human waste. You hold your breath as you pass, trying to keep the taste of it out of your mouth. You continue walking, the noise of the city swelling around you. You need to relieve yourself, and the chamber pot is back at the apartment. You scan the street for a forica, a public latrine. You spot the entrance, marked by a simple stone relief. You pay a small coin to the attendant at the door. The conductor forician step inside. The room is rectangular, lined on three sides with stone benches. The benches have keyhole-shaped openings cut into them, spaced intimately close together, with no dividers for privacy. It is a social space. A dozen men are already seated, tunics hitched up, chatting amiably about politics and chariot races as they do their business. You find an empty spot and sit. The stone is cool against your skin. Beneath you, a channel of running water whisks the waste away, carrying it into the complex sewer system that runs beneath the street. In front of your feet, there is a small gutter with fresh water flowing through it. This is for the sponge stick, the xylospongium. You see the communal tool resting in a basin of vinegar water, nearby a sponge attached to a wooden stick. When a man finishes, he takes the stick, cleans himself, rinses it in the running gutter, and returns it to the vinegar for the next person. It is a system that relies on a shared definition of hygiene that feels alien to you. Yet here, it is simply how things are done. You finish, use the sponge, rinse your hands in a fountain near the door, and step back out into the sun. The relief of the latrine is temporary, for the assault on your senses never truly stops. As you walk toward the Tiber River, the air grows heavy with a new smell. The slaughterhouses. You are approaching the Forum Boreum, the cattle market. Here, the waste is visceral. Blood, offal, and animal dung make the cobblestones slick and treacherous. You see butchers carving carcasses in the open air, tossing unwanted organs into baskets that buzz with clouds of flies. The river is close now, and you can smell the water, a damp, earthy scent that mingles with the metallic tang of blood. The Tiber is the ultimate destination for much of Rome's filth. While the great drain, the Cloaca Maxima, carries sewage and runoff into the river, much is simply thrown directly from the banks. You stop at the embankment and look down at the water. It is brown and churning, swollen with the runoff from the hills. A dead dog floats by, caught in an eddy near a bridge piling. Further out, a barge is making its way upstream, fighting the current. The river is the lifeline of the city, bringing in the grain and oil that keeps the population alive, but it is also its sewer. The duality is striking. Rome feeds from the river and excretes into it, a cycle of consumption and waste that is visible in the swirling, murky water. You watch as a man on the bridge above dumps a basket of ash and broken tiles over the railing. The debris hits the water with a splash and disappears, swallowed by the Tiber. Turning away from the river, you head back into the tangled streets of the city center. The sun is nearing its zenith now, and the heat is intensifying the smells of the street. The stone beneath your sandals radiates warmth. You pass a street shrine, a small altar dedicated to the Lares, the guardian spirits of the neighborhood. It is one of the few clean spots you have seen. Someone has swept the area in front of it and placed a fresh offering of flowers and a small cake. It is a reminder that amidst the filth and the chaos, there is still a deep sense of order and piety. The Romans believed that purity is important, ritualistically speaking, even if their streets are covered in dung. You navigate around a large puddle of stagnant water that has collected in a depression in the road. Mosquitoes hover over it in a low cloud. Rome has always struggled with standing water and the diseases it brings. The fever, malaria, is a constant low-level threat, a background hum of danger that everyone lives with. You swat at a bug near your ear and pick up your pace. You have business to attend to near the Theater of Pompey, a part of the city that is slightly more upscale, though clean is a relative term. As you walk, you notice the walls of the buildings. They are covered in graffiti. It is not just scrawled names, it is a conversation. There are political slogans painted in red and black, advertisements for gladiator games, lost and found notices for stolen tunics, and crude insults directed at rivals. Appius is a thief, reads one. Samius to Cornelius, go hang yourself, reads another. The walls are a bulletin board of the city's id in a world without paper flyers or digital screens. The plaster of the city walls is the medium of mass communication. And just like the street below, the walls are layered with the debris of human expression, new messages painted over old ones in a never-ending cycle of noise. You narrowly avoid stepping on a discarded sandal, its leather strap broken, lying in the middle of the path. Shoes, like pottery, are worn until they fail and then abandoned. There is no recycling bin for leather. It will sit there until it is kicked into a gutter, buried in mud, or perhaps scavenged by someone desperate enough to try and repair it. Scavengers are everywhere in the city. You see a man with a sack over his shoulder picking through a pile of trash on a corner, looking for scraps of metal, bone, or rag that can be sold. In an economy of scarcity, trash is a resource. The noise of the city shifts as you approach the theater district. The chaotic shouting of the market gives way to the murmur of crowds gathering for a performance. But even here, the trash persists. The porticos, with their elegant columns and shaded walkways, are littered with the remnants of snacks sold to theatergoers' nutshells, fruit peels, and crusts. Slaves are sweeping, trying to keep the marble clear, fighting a losing battle against the tide of debris generated by the crowd. You pause to lean against a column, watching the scene. The grandeur of the architecture is undeniable. The soaring arches, the gleaming stone, the statues of gods and heroes. But looking down, your eyes are drawn back to the gutter, where a stream of gray water trickles slowly toward the drain, carrying with it the refuse of the empire. You realize that this is the true texture of Rome. It is not the pristine white marble city of the imagination. It is a lived-in, used-up, discarded-upon place. It is a city where luxury and filth exist in intimate proximity, where the smell of saffron perfume fights with the stench of the sewer, where a golden statue might overlook a pile of rotting garbage. You push off from the column and merge back into the crowd, just another particle in the chaotic flow of the city. Morning is passing, transforming into the heavy, drowsy heat of the afternoon, and the city's metabolism churns on, digesting goods and people, and excreting the waste that will one day form the archaeological layers of history. You adjust your tunic, check your footing on the slick stones, and keep walking, navigating the debris of a million lives lived in close quarters. The day is only half over, and there are miles of refuse-strewn streets yet to traverse. The sun has climbed higher now, burning through the morning haze and turning the city into a kiln. You leave the relatively open spaces of the theater district and head south, following the curve of the river toward the Aventine Hill. The air here changes texture again. The sharp human intimacy of the subura and the metallic tang of the cattle market give way to something heavier, dustier, and vastly more industrial. You are entering the Emporium, the beating commercial heart of the empire, and the port district where the world's goods and its garbage wash up on the shores of Rome. The noise is different here. It is not the chatter of neighbors or the haggle of the market. It is the rhythmic, grinding roar of labor on a massive scale. The streets are wider, paved with heavy slabs of basalt that have been grooved deep by the iron-rimmed wheels of countless carts. Even though heavy transport is technically banned during the day, the rule is looser here at the docks. You step aside as a mule train clatters past, the animals laden with sacks of grain from Egypt. The dust they kick up coats your throat, a dry, gritty powder that tastes of dried earth and burlap. To your right, the Tiber churns, brown and sluggish. The riverbank here is not a natural shore, but a complex infrastructure of stone quays, steps, and mooring rings. The water is thick with barges, flat-bottomed boats that have been towed upriver from the seaport at Ostia by teams of oxen walking the towpaths. They are piled high with amphorae, timber, and marble. You watch as a crane, a massive wooden treadwheel powered by men walking inside it, swings a net of stone blocks from a barge to the quay. The wood creaks and groans under the strain, a sound like a dying animal that echoes off the warehouse walls. You walk past the Horia Galbi, the gigantic warehouse complex that stores the state-owned grain and olive oil. The scale of the building is oppressive. The brick walls rise up like cliffs, blocking out the sun and trapping the heat in the street. Inside the arched entrances, you catch glimpses of the vast, cavernous storage rooms. The smell wafting out is a dense, suffocating mixture of raw flour, old olive oil, and the musty, sweet scent of thousands of mice. Vermin are the unofficial citizens of this district. You see a rat, brazen and fat, scuttle across the threshold of a warehouse and disappear into a drain. The Romans battle them with cats, ferrets, and poison, but the sheer volume of food stored here makes it a losing war. Every sack of grain that is chewed open, every jar of oil that leaks, creates waste. You step over a dark stain on the pavement where a jar must have been dropped recently. The oil has soaked into the stone, turning it black and slippery. Flies carpet the spill, a buzzing, iridescent layer that lifts in a cloud as you walk by and then settles immediately back down. But the oil is not just a spill, it is a geological force here. As you round the bend of the Aventine, the skyline changes. Ahead of you, rising above the warehouses and the tenements, is the hill you thought about this morning, Monte Testaccio. Up close, it is staggering. It is not a random heap. It is a meticulously engineering structure, a ziggurat of refuse. You walk toward its base, drawn by the sheer improbability of it. The ground around the hill is paved not with stone, but with a crunching layer of terracotta fragments, the shards or testi that give the hill its name. You stand at the foot of the mound and look up. It towers over you, 100 feet of broken pottery stacked with terrifying precision. You can see the layers. The amphorae have not been thrown haphazardly. They have been stacked in terraces, rim to base, to ensure stability. You are looking at the skeletons of 50 million containers. The smell here is unique in all the world. It is the smell of rancid olive oil, a heavy, sour, oxidizing odor that clings to the back of your throat. It is the ghost of a billion salads and lamps, turned foul by time and heat. To combat the stench and the insects, the curators, the officials in charge of the dump have ordered lime to be poured over the layers. The sharp, chalky scent of the lime battles with the oil, creating a chemical aroma that makes your eyes water. You watch the process in action. A team of laborers, their tunics stripped to the waist and their skin coated in dust, is guiding a mule cart up a winding ramp cut into the side of the hill. The cart is loaded with broken amphorae from the port. These are the Baetica Dressel 20s, the globular jars from Spain that carry the bulk of Rome's oil. They are heavy, thick-walled, and useless once emptied. You watch as the men reach the active working level. They don't just dump the load. They unload the shards by hand, fitting them into the existing matrix of the hill, seemingly building a wall out of garbage. It is trash disposal as architecture. You pick up a shard from the ground. It is heavy, curved, and thick, about the size of your hand. On the inside, there is a dark, resinous residue of the old oil. On the handle, you can clearly see a stamp, a manufacturer's mark, perhaps the name of a wealthy estate owner in Cordoba or Seville. This piece of clay was dug from the earth in Spain, shaped by a potter, fired in a kiln filled with oil pressed from Spanish olives, shipped down a river, loaded onto a seagoing vessel, sailed across the Mediterranean, transferred to a river barge, towed up the Tiber, unloaded, emptied, and finally brought here to die. The logistical effort required to create this single piece of trash is mind-boggling, and it is just one of millions under your feet. You drop the shard. It lands with a dull clack against its brothers. This hill is a monument to the Annona, the state-subsidized food dole that keeps the Roman mob fed and docile. It is the physical shadow of the empire's consumption. You turn away from the hill, the smell of rancid oil clinging to your clothes, and head back toward the river. You need air that moves, even if it smells of the Tiber. Walking along the quay, you see the other side of the waste equation, the river itself. The Tiber is the city's colon. You pass the mouth of a large sewer outfall, an arched opening in the embankment wall. A steady stream of gray-black water gushes from it, cascading into the river. This is the runoff from the streets you walked earlier, the water from the baths, the overflow from the latrines. It hits the river water and creates a plume of filth that trails downstream. Debris bobs in the current. You see the carcass of a donkey, bloated and floating legs up, snagged against a mooring rope. A dockworker pushes it away with a long pole, sending it drifting toward the sea. Nobody looks shocked. The river is a conveyor belt for anything the city doesn't want. You see broken wicker baskets, straw packing material, and vegetable stalks swirling in the eddies. Further down the quay, you encounter a different kind of waste processing. A group of men are gathered around a pile of what looks like wet rags. As you get closer, the smell hits you not oil or sewage this time, but the sweet metallic stench of blood and bone glue. These are bone collectors. They are sorting through a pile of animal bones scavenged from the butchers and the streets. In a world without plastic, bone is a vital material. It is used for hairpins, needles, gaming dice, knife handles, and hinges. You watch a man pick up a cow's femur. He examines it with a critical eye, checking for cracks or rot. If it's good, it will be sold to a workshop to be carved. If it's bad, it will be boiled down for glue. Nothing organic is wasted if it can be helped. The concept of trash is relative here. What the butcher throws away, the bone worker treasures. What the bone worker rejects, the glue maker boils. What the glue maker leaves, the rats eat. It is a cascade of consumption that strips every resource down to its atomic level. The sun is directly overhead now, and the shadows have retracted to puddles of darkness beneath the awnings. The heat is becoming physical, a weight pressing down on your shoulders. The stones of the quay are hot enough to burn bare feet. You decide to cut inland, away from the open glare of the river, into the narrow, shaded streets of the craft district near the Velabrum. Here, the air is still and hot, but shaded. The sound of the river is replaced by the tapping of hammers and the hiss of bellows. You are in a neighborhood of workshops. You pass a Faber Aerarius, a bronzesmith. The front of his shop is open to the street. Inside, two slaves are working a bellows, feeding air into a small, glowing charcoal furnace. The smith is pouring molten metal into a mold. You look at the pile of raw material in the corner of the shop. It isn't fresh ingots from the mines of Britain or Cyprus. It is a heap of scrap. You see a crushed bronze lamp, a broken buckle, a statue with a missing arm, and a twisted piece of piping. This is the recycling center of Rome. Metal is too valuable to be thrown in a landfill like the pottery. It is collected, sold to the scrutarius, the junk dealer, and then resold to the smith to be melted down and born again. You watch as the smith picks up the broken lamp. It is green with verdigris, old and useless. He tosses it into a crucible. In 20 minutes, it will be liquid. In an hour, it might be a brooch or a coin or a surgical instrument. There is a continuity to the material here. The bronze in your belt buckle might once have been a sword used in the Punic Wars, melted and recast a dozen times over the centuries. History is constantly being liquefied and reshaped. Next door to the smith is a glassworker. The furnace here is even hotter. You stand well back, wiping sweat from your forehead. The glassblower is working a blob of molten glass on the end of a long iron pipe. In the corner, there is a barrel full of broken glass shards cullet. Just like the metal, glass is endlessly recyclable. Roman glass is often a pale blue-green color, the natural tint of the sand, but here you see shards of deep blue and amber, remnants of expensive vessels that shattered. They will be melted down to aid the fusion of the new batch. You realize that new is a misnomer. Everything in this city is made of something else. You continue walking, weaving through the maze of workshops. The street is narrow, and you have to press yourself against a wall to let a water wagon pass. It is spraying water onto the street to settle the dust and cool the stones, a small mercy provided by the local magistrate. The wet stone smells of rain and minerals for a fleeting moment before the heat evaporates the water, leaving the air humid and thick. Your stomach rumbles again, but the thought of hot food in this heat is unappealing. You pass a vendor selling slices of melon and chilled water. You buy a slice paying a copper coin. The fruit is warm from the ambient air but sweet and hydrating. You eat it standing in the shadow of a temple porch, spitting the seeds into your hand. You look around for a place to throw the rind. There is no bin. You do what everyone else does. You toss it into the gutter. It lands on top of a pile of straw and mud. Within minutes, you know a pig or a dog will find it. The street cleaning crew is biological. As you eat, you observe the footwear of the people passing by. You see a slave walking in bare feet, his soles calloused and blackened by the city filth. You see a soldier in caligy, the hobnailed military sandals, the iron studs sparking against the stone. And you see a discarded sandal lying in the mud near the gutter, just like the one you saw earlier. But this one is being investigated. A street urchin, a boy of no more than 7 or 8, is poking it with a stick. He picks it up, inspects the leather. The strap is torn, but the sole is thick. He tucks it into his tunic. He will likely take it to a cobbler who can sew a new strap onto it, or perhaps he will use the leather to patch his own shoes. The scavenging instinct starts early here. The heat is peaking now. It is the 6th hour, the sexta, the time when Rome pauses. The frantic energy of the morning begins to dissipate as the shopkeepers shutter their stalls and the wealthy retreat to the cool interiors of their homes for the siesta. The noise level drops, the roar of the city softening to a murmur. You feel the exhaustion of the heat seeping into your bones. The smells, however, do not rest. In the heat they ferment. The garbage in the streets cooks. The smell of the fish market, miles away, seems to drift on the stagnant air. You need to get off the street. You head toward the portico of Octavia, a massive rectangular colonnade that encloses temples and a library. It is a public space, a refuge of marble and shade. As you step beneath the portico, the temperature drops 10 degrees. The roof blocks the sun and the marble floor is cool. It is crowded here, but it is a quiet crowd. People are sitting on the steps, leaning against columns, some dozing, some reading scrolls, some playing dice quietly. You find a spot on the base of a column and sit down. You lean your head back against the cold stone. From here, you can look out into the sun-drenched courtyard. You see a cleaning crew of public slaves moving through the open space. They are sweeping the paving stones, gathering the dust and debris into piles. But you notice something. They aren't putting it into carts to be hauled away. They are sweeping it into the decorative flower beds that line the walkways. The dust, the scraps of food, the dried leaves, it is all just being pushed from the stone to the soil. It is a cosmetic cleaning. The trash doesn't leave. It just changes location. Closing your eyes for a moment, you listen to the sounds of the resting city. The cooing of pigeons nesting in the capital of the column above you. The soft click of dice. The distant, rhythmic snoring of a man sleeping on a bench nearby. You think about the chamber pot you carried this morning, the pottery shards on the mountain, the oil on the warehouse floor, the dead dog in the river, the melted bronze in the crucible. You realize that Rome is a machine that processes the world. It pulls in grain from Africa, oil from Spain, tin from Britain, spices from India, and beasts from the frontier. It consumes them, metabolizes them, and excretes the remains. The city is growing not just upward in marble, but upward in waste. The ground level of the Forum today is meters higher than it was in the time of Romulus, raised solely by the accumulation of debris. You are sitting on top of centuries of trash. You shift your weight, the stone hard against your back. You are tired, dirty, and hot. The glamour of the empire feels very far away. Here in the shade, you are just another body in the crowd, trying to digest the day. But the day is not over. The afternoon brings its own rhythms, its own challenges, and its own specific varieties of filth. The baths will open soon, promising cleanliness, but even there, as you will discover, the line between purity and pollution is thinner than the water's surface. For now, you rest. You watch a beetle crawl across the marble floor, navigating the landscape of a dropped crumb of bread. It struggles with the prize, pushing it toward a crack in the stone. Even here in the shadow of the gods, the work of cleaning up continues, one crumb at a time. The heat shimmers in the courtyard beyond the shade, blurring the lines of the buildings. You take a deep breath, tasting the dust, and prepare yourself for the second half of the day. The The city is waking up from its nap, and the cycle is about to begin again. The sun begins its slow descent, shifting the angles of the shadows. The light turns golden, heavy with dust motes. A bell rings in the distance, signaling the opening of the public baths. Around you, the sleepers stir. The dice players pack up their game. The respite is over. You stand up, your legs stiff, and brush the dust from your tunic. You step out from the cool sanctuary of the portico and back into the glare, ready to wash the grime of the morning from your skin, unaware that the water you seek has its own dark history flowing through it. The walk to the baths of Agrippa is not far, but the streets are filling up again. The carts are still banned, but the foot traffic is denser. People are moving with purpose now, towel and oil flask in hand. You join the stream of humanity, just another drop in the river of Rome, flowing toward the great stone basins where the city tries to wash away its sins, or at least its smell. The ground beneath your feet vibrates slightly, perhaps a heavy wagon moving illegally, or perhaps just the settling of the millions of broken pots deep in the earth, shifting under the weight of the living city. You approach the baths of Agrippa, the first of the great imperial thermal complexes to be built in the city. The sun is now a heavy, orange orb dipping toward the Janiculum Hill, casting long, distorted shadows across the Campus Martius. The heat of the day hasn't broken, but it has changed quality, becoming thick and motionless. The entrance to the baths is a gaping archway that seems to inhale the crowd. You step through, moving from the blinding glare of the street into the dim, echoing cavern of the entrance hall. The air here is immediately different, warmer, wetter, and smelling intensely of wood smoke, olive oil, and unwashed humanity. You might expect a place dedicated to hygiene to smell like soap or flowers, but Roman cleaning is a mechanical and chemical violence, not a gentle sterilization. You make your way to the apoditerium, the changing room. It is a vaulted chamber, the ceiling lost in shadow, the walls lined with wooden cubbyholes. The noise is a cacophony of slapping flesh, clattering sandals, and shouting voices. You find an empty niche for your tunic and sandals, but you do not simply leave them. Theft is rampant here. The capsare, the locker attendants, are notorious for working with thieves or simply turning a blind eye. You pay a small coin to a particularly sullen-looking boy to watch your things, knowing that his loyalty is rented by the hour and fragile at best. Stripping off your clothes, you feel the vulnerability of nakedness in a city that is usually armored in wool and linen. You are now just one more pale, soft body in a sea of thousands. You grab your kitta's small flask of oil, a strigil, a curved metal scraper, and a towel that has seen better days. You step out of the changing room and into the palestra, the exercise yard. This is where the cleaning process begins, paradoxically, by getting dirtier. The palestra is an open-air courtyard surrounded by colonnades. The ground is covered in sand. Hundreds of men are here, engaging in the serious business of working up a sweat. Some are lifting lead weights, grunting with exertion. Others are wrestling, their bodies slick with oil and coated in the dust of the yard. You find a space near a pillar and begin to stretch. The goal is to open the pores, to force the body to expel its toxins from the inside out. You do some calisthenics, swinging your arms, feeling the sweat prickle on your forehead. You watch a pair of wrestlers nearby. They grapple and fall into the sand, rolling in the dirt. When they stand up, they are coated in a gray paste, a mixture of sweat, olive oil, and the grit of the ground. This paste is not just filth to them, it is a commodity. Known as gloios, the scrapings from the bodies of athletes and gladiators are collected, bottled, and sold as a medical treatment. Roman women believe it cures complexion issues. Men use it for rheumatism. You are watching the production line of a pharmaceutical product. The sweat dripping off the man's nose is liquid gold, provided it is harvested correctly. After 20 minutes, you are sufficiently heated. You are dripping with sweat, and your skin is tacky with the humid air. It is time for the oil. You uncork your small flask. The oil is cheap, green, and smells slightly acidic. You pour a palmful and begin to rub it into your skin. You are not washing with water yet. You are emulsifying the dirt. The oil binds with the dust and the dead skin cells, creating a sludge that can be scraped away. You ask a stranger standing nearby to do your back. This is the etiquette of the baths, a mutual grooming pact. He rubs the oil into your shoulders with rough, calloused hands, kneading the muscles. You return the favor, slathering oil onto his hairy back, ignoring the boil on his shoulder blade. In the baths, personal space does not exist. Now comes the strigil. You take the curved bronze tool and press the edge against your forearm. You scrape downward. The tool collects a ribbon of gray-black sludge, the oil, the sweat, the street dust, the dead skin. You flick the sludge onto the floor. Everyone is doing this. The floor of the palestra is slippery with the discarded outer layers of the Roman population. Slaves scurry between the bathers with buckets of water, splashing the tiles to wash the slime into the drains, but they can't keep up. You are walking on a biofilm of strangers. Cleaned of the surface grime, or at least having rearranged it, you move toward the bathhouse proper. The transition is marked by a wall of heat. You enter the tepidarium, the warm room. The air here is heated by the hypocaust system under the floor. You can feel the warmth radiating up through the soles of your feet. You wear wooden sandals to keep from burning them. The room is filled with steam, a fog that obscures the high, vaulted ceiling. Men sit on stone benches, gasping slightly in the thick air. You find a spot and sit. The purpose here is to acclimate, to prepare the heart for the shock of the heat to come. You look at the man next to you. He is coughing, a wet, rattling sound that echoes in the tiled room. The baths are where the sick come to get better, which means they are also where the healthy come to get sick. There is no germ theory here. The water and the steam are viewed as universally healing. You try not to breathe too deeply, but the air is shared by everyone. You watch a drop of condensation form on the ceiling, hang for a moment, and then fall, landing on the shoulder of a man sleeping on the bench. From the warm room, you move to the caldarium, the hot room. This is the heart of the complex. The heat here is oppressive, a physical weight. The centerpiece is a large, rectangular pool of hot water. You step in. The water is scalding, dangerously hot. You sink down to your chin. The relief is immediate, the heat penetrating your tired muscles. But then you look at the water. It is late in the day. Thousands of men have been in this pool before you. The water is not clear. It is murky, suspended with particles of dirt, lint from towels, and the residue of oil that didn't get scraped off. A film of gray scum floats on the surface, collecting in the corners where the water is stagnant. Romans do not use chlorine. The water is constantly flowing, fed by the aqueduct and drained at the other end, but the turnover rate is not fast enough to combat the volume of users. You are soaking in a communal broth. You float in the hot water, trying to ignore the bandage floating near your knee. You look up at the domed ceiling. It is pierced by a circular opening, an oculus that lets in a shaft of fading sunlight. Through the steam, it looks like the eye of a god staring down at the stew of humanity below. The acoustics of the room amplify every sound. A splash sounds like a gunshot. A laugh sounds like a scream. It is a sensory overload, a hallucinatory mix of heat, noise, and smell. At the far end of the pool near the water intake, you can see where the water comes in fresh. Men crowd that area, fighting for the cleanest spots. You decide not to join the scrum. You close your eyes and let the heat do its work. You can feel your heart rate rising. The Romans believe this balances the humors. You just feel lightheaded. After soaking for what feels like an hour but is probably only 10 minutes, you climb out of the pool. Your skin is red and steaming. You feel cleaner in a way, boiled like a piece of meat. But the ritual isn't over. You need to close the pores. You stumble through the heavy doors into the frigidarium, the cold room. The shock is instant. The air here is unheated, and the pool is filled with water that has come straight from the aqueduct, from the cold springs in the distant hills. You don't hesitate, you jump in. The cold hits you like a hammer, driving the air from your lungs. You surface, gasping. The water here is clearer, the cold inhibiting the bacterial soup somewhat, but it is still far from pristine. You tread water, feeling your skin tighten. The contrast is invigorating. This is the moment the Romans love, the thermal shock that makes you feel alive. You climb out of the cold pool, shivering uncontrollably. A slave, either your own or one you tip, throws a rough linen towel around you. You dry off vigorously, rubbing the skin until it glows pink. You are now clean. You have scraped, boiled, and frozen the day's filth away. But as you dry your feet, you notice the floor. It is wet and muddy from the traffic of thousands of feet. You put your sandals back on, but your feet are already dirty again. It is a futile cycle. You dress in the locker room, checking your tunic. It smells of the street smoke and sweat. You are putting dirty clothes back onto a clean body. It is a compromise you have to accept. You grab your things and head back out into the palestra, moving toward the exit. But before you leave, you stop at the latrines attached to the bath complex. These are grander than the ones you used this morning. Marble seats, statues of dolphins, mosaics on the floor. But the function is the same, and so is the smell. The social aspect is in full swing here. Men are sitting side by side, discussing the news of the Senate, the price of grain, the scandal of the gladiator who threw a fight. You take a seat. The man next to you is a wealthy merchant. You can tell by the quality of his ring. In the latrine, the hierarchy of Rome collapses. Everyone pulls up their tunic the same way. The merchant offers you the sponge stick first. You decline, having brought your own small piece of wool, a luxury you allow yourself. Leaving the baths, you step back out into the city. The sun has set and the blue hour has descended on Rome. The air is slightly cooler, but the humidity remains. The streets are changing character again. The shops are closing, the heavy wooden shutters banging shut with a sound like gunfire. The working day is done, but the night shift is just beginning. This is when the carts come out. You hear them before you see them, the rumble of heavy timber wagons. The law bans them during the day to prevent gridlock, so the logistics of the empire happen at night. A team of 4 oxen lumbers past, pulling a cart stacked high with timber beams. The driver shouts, cracking a whip. You press yourself against the wall of a building to avoid being crushed. The wheels grind against the curb, sparking on the stone. The city, which was merely loud during the day, becomes dangerous at night. You are hungry. The light meal of bread and lentils is long gone. You head toward a popina, a wine bar that serves hot food. You find one near the theater of Pompey, a dive frequented by actors, gamblers, and the lower rungs of the social ladder. The room is small, smoky, and crowded. The only light comes from oil lamps hanging from chains, their flames sputtering and casting dancing shadows on the graffiti-covered walls. The smell is a dense mixture of sour wine, garlic, and frying sausages. You push your way to the counter. The landlord, a man with a scar running through his eyebrow, nods at you. You order a cup of the house wine mixed with water, of course, and spiced with resin to hide the vinegar taste, and a serving of lukaniki smoked sausages. He slaps a wooden bowl onto the counter. The sausages are greasy, bursting with fat and peppercorns. You eat them with your fingers, wiping the grease on your tunic. It is heavy, salty food designed to soak up the wine. As you eat, you look around the room. In the corner, a game of dice is getting heated. A man slams his fist on the table, cursing Fortuna. Beside him, a woman is breastfeeding a baby while drinking a cup of wine. A prostitute stands near the door, negotiating with a soldier. The popina is the living room of the poor. It is where you go when your apartment is too hot, too dark, and too lonely. But you can't stay here all night. You have to get back to the Subura before the streets become truly impassable. You finish your wine, the sediment gritty in your teeth, and head out. The darkness is absolute in the narrow streets. There are no streetlights in Rome. The only illumination comes from the moon and the occasional lamp in a window or a torch carried by a wealthy man's slave. You do not have a torch. You have to navigate by memory and by the dim ambient light. You walk carefully. The stepping stones you used this morning are treacherous in the dark. You can hear the scuttling of rats in the trash piles. They own the night. You turn a corner and nearly trip over a body. It is a beggar, curled up in a doorway, wrapped in rags. He grunts in his sleep but doesn't wake. You step over him. The line between the sleeping and the dead is thin in the streets at night. As you walk, you hear a splash from above. You freeze. A voice shouts, "Cave! Watch out!" from a third-story window, followed instantly by the wet slap of liquid hitting the stones a few feet in front of you. You look up, but the window is already dark. Someone has just emptied a chamber pot. You missed a drenching by seconds. This is the nightly hazard of Rome. The Lex Aquilia might forbid it, but in the dark, gravity is the only law that matters. You step around the fresh puddle, holding your breath, and quicken your pace. You reach your building, the massive insula rising like a cliff face in the dark. The entrance is a black mouth. You step inside, feeling your way to the stairs. The stairwell is pitch black. You have to climb 3 flights by feel, your hand trailing along the rough plaster wall. You count the steps, 12, turn, 12, turn. You can smell the building, the old timber, the damp rot, the cabbage from 100 dinners. You reach your floor and fumble for your door latch. It clicks open. You step into your room. Stiflingly hot. The heat of the day has been trapped in the masonry and is now radiating inward. You fumble for your flint and steel and light a small oil lamp. The flame flickers to life, revealing your small world. The chamber pot is where you left it, empty but unwashed. The bed is waiting, but you are not ready for sleep yet. You sit on the edge of the bed, listening to the building. You can hear the couple next door arguing in low, hissed voices. You can hear a baby crying on the floor above. You can hear the heavy thud of a cart passing in the street below, shaking the floorboards. You look at your hands. They look clean in the dim light, but you can feel the phantom grit of the city under your fingernails. You think about the water you sat in at the baths. You think about the sausage grease in your stomach. You think about the urine in the fuller's tub and the oil on the mountain of shards. You are part of this cycle. You are a consumer and a producer of waste. In a city of 1 million people, you are a single cell in a massive digesting organism. You blow out the lamp to save oil. The darkness rushes back in, heavy and total. You lie back on the straw mattress. The wool blanket is scratchy, but you pull it up anyway to ward off the drafts and the bugs. You stare up into the dark, listening to the roar of the night traffic, the eternal background noise of the capital of the world. The day is done, but the city never really stops. It just changes shift. You close your eyes, trying to find a rhythm in the noise that will let you sleep, drifting on the tide of history, a small, anonymous cork bobbing in the ocean of time. Tomorrow, the sun will rise, the chamber pot will need emptying, and the mountain of trash will grow by another cartload. But for now, in the dark, you can pretend that the air is fresh and the streets are clean. You let your breathing slow, matching the heavy, heaving breath of the sleeping building. The rats are scratching in the walls, a sound like dry leaves skittering on pavement. It is the sound of the city eating itself. You let it lull you, a lullaby of decay and endurance. You are safe for now in the belly of the beast. The darkness of the Roman night is not a void. It is a weight. It presses against your eyelids, heavy with the trapped heat of the day and the suspended particulate matter of 1 million charcoal fires. You are lying on your straw mattress, the wool blanket kicked down to your ankles in a futile attempt to escape the stifling temperature of the room, but sleep is a distant, retreating shore. In the modern world, night is defined by a drop in decibels, a collective quieting of the human machine. In ancient Rome, night is simply a changing of the guard, a shift in the frequency of the chaos. You stare up into the blackness of the ceiling, listening. This is the hour of the wolf, or rather, the hour of the wheel. The Lex Iulia Municipalis, the law instituted by Julius Caesar himself, forbids heavy transport wagons from the streets of Rome during the first 10 hours of the day. The result is that the moment the sun vanishes, the logistical artery of the empire opens wide. The silence you crave is murdered by the iron rims of heavy cart wheels grinding against basalt paving stones. It is a low-frequency rumble that vibrates through the foundation of the insula, traveling up the brickwork, through the floorboards, and into your bones. It sounds like a continuous rolling thunderstorm that never quite breaks. You give up on the idea of sleep. The air in the small apartment has become stagnant, used up by your own lungs and the breathing of the building. You sit up, your head swimming slightly in the heat, and decide to seek the only relief available, the roof. You fumble in the dark for your tunic, sliding it over your sweating skin, and find your sandals by the door. You do not light your lamp. Oil is expensive, and your eyes have adjusted to the gloom. You navigate the cluttered room by memory 3 steps to the door, avoid the table, mind the chest and step out into the corridor. The stairwell is darker than the room, a vertical shaft of absolute blackness. You climb, feeling the worn depression of the stone steps with your feet, your hand tracing the rough plaster of the wall for balance. As you ascend past the 4th and 5th floors, the air changes. It becomes slightly thinner, less heavy with the smell of cabbage and bodies, but sharper with the scent of smoke. You reach the final ladder, push open the trapdoor, and emerge onto the flat, tiled roof of the insula. The view that greets you is not the romantic panorama of marble columns and moonlit temples often painted by artists. It is a vision of a city on fire, or so it seems. Rome at night is a galaxy of flickering orange points. Thousands of torches, oil lamps, and cooking fires struggle against the dark, casting a nervous, trembling glow over the sea of rooftops. The smoke hangs low, trapped by the thermal inversion of the humid night, creating a smog that the Romans call gravidue, heavy, sickly air that burns the throat and waters the eyes. You walk to the parapet, a low wall of brick that separates you from a 60-foot drop to the street below. From this vantage point, you can see the anatomy of the night. The street down there, a narrow canyon between the apartment blocks, is a river of movement. You look down at the source of the noise. A line of wagons, drawn by oxen and mules, stretches as far as you can see. They are bringing in the lifeblood of the city, timber from the Apennines, blocks of travertine stone for the emperor's new forum, and sacks of grain from the port. But mixed in with the supply chain is the removal chain. You spot a cart that looks different. It is a high-walled wagon, covered with a tarp that ripples in the slight breeze. Even from this height, a faint, sharp odor wafts up to join the smoke. This is a plostrum stercorarium, a manure cart. While you were trying to sleep, the stercorari, the waste collectors, have been at work. They are the unsung, unseen immune system of the city. In a city without a comprehensive, pressurized sewer system connected to every home, The removal of human waste is a manual labor. The wealthy have private cesspits that must be emptied. The public latrines have holding tanks that require dredging. You watch as the cart stops in front of a building down the block. Two figures, illuminated by the flaring light of a torch stuck in a bracket on the wagon, jump down. They're carrying long-handled scoops and buckets. They disappear into the ground floor of the building. You know what they are doing. They are digging out the puticuli, the collection pits. It is a job of unimaginable foulness, performed in the dark, in the heat, amidst the rats and the roaches. Yet it is a business. The contents of that cart are not just filth, they are fertilizer. The waste of the city will be carted out through the gates, past the tombs of the ancestors, and sold to the market gardeners who grow the vegetables that will return to the city tomorrow morning. It is a closed loop of nitrogen and biology, powered by the muscle of men who will never be recorded in history. You lean over the parapet, entranced by the mechanical rhythm of it. The scoop goes in, the bucket fills, the bucket is emptied into the cart. Rinse, repeat. It is a slow, bucket-by-bucket bailing out of a sinking ship. If they stopped, even for a week, the city would drown in its own filth. The purity of Rome, the white togas and the marble statues, is sustained by this nightly purgation. Your gaze shifts to a different kind of movement on the rooftops across the street. A shadow detaches itself from a chimney and skitters across the tiles. A cat. Rome is overrun with them. They are not pets, generally speaking. They are working animals, the biological control agents for the other great population of the city, the rats. You watch the cat pause, crouch, and then pounce. A squeak cut short drifts across the gap between buildings. The waste of the city, the spilled grain, the discarded crust supports a massive ecosystem of vermin, which in turn supports the predators. You are watching the food chain in action, playing out on the terracotta tiles. The air on the roof is cooler than in your room, but it is filled with ash. You brush a flake of gray soot from your arm. This is the fallout from the bakeries. Bread is the fuel of the people, and to feed 1 million people, the ovens must burn all night. Somewhere nearby, a pistrinum, a commercial bakery, is firing its ovens. They burn wood, charcoal, and sometimes, when fuel is scarce, olive pits, the very refuse you saw at Monte Testaccio. The burning of the old soaked pits produces a hot, fierce fire, but it releases a greasy, black smoke that coats everything in the district. You are breathing the exhaust of the city's digestion. Suddenly, a different sound cuts through the rumble of the carts. A rhythmic, marching cadence of hobnailed boots on stone, distinct from the shuffle of the crowd or the clatter of hooves. You look down and see a patrol moving up the street. They carry torches and buckets. These are the vigils, the night watch. They are a combination of police force and fire brigade, a paramilitary unit formed by Augustus to keep the city from burning down. Fire is the great terror of Rome. The city is a tinderbox of dry timber, oil lamps, and crowded conditions. You watch the vigils stop a man walking alone. They question him, checking for weapons, for stolen goods, or perhaps just enforcing the curfew that applies to anyone who looks suspicious. The man gestures, points to a doorway, and they let him pass. Their eyes are constantly scanning the windows, looking for the telltale flicker of an uncontrolled flame. You see them pause at a street corner where a pile of rubbish has accumulated broken crates, straw, and rags. This is a fire hazard. The centurion in charge kicks the pile, shouting something at the closed shutters of the nearest shop. He is likely issuing a fine, or at least a threat. The trash of Rome is not just an aesthetic problem, it is an existential threat. A spark in that pile of straw could ignite the shop, then the apartment block, then the whole district. The Great Fire of 64 AD is a memory etched into the city's DNA, a scar that hasn't fully healed. The vigils are the guardians against the return of that Holocaust. You watch them move on, their torches bobbing like fireflies in the canyon. You decide to go down. The roof offers air, but the isolation is starting to feel unnerving. The sounds of the city are pulling you in. You want to see the river again, to see the other end of the night shift. You descend the stairs, the darkness swallowing you again, and emerge back onto the street. The sensory experience of the street at night is fundamentally different from the day. Your vision is limited to pools of amber light cast by the torches of passing wagons, separated by stretches of profound shadow. Your hearing becomes your primary sense. You hear the splash of water, someone washing down a counter in a wine shop that has finally closed. You hear the drunken singing of a group of young men returning from a banquet, their voices echoing off the stone walls. You smell the sharp, metallic scent of a blacksmith's forge that is working late, the hammer ringing out a lonely rhythm. You hug the wall, staying out of the center of the street where the carts dominate. You are heading towards the Cloaca Maxima, the great drain near the Forum. You want to see the mouth of the beast. As you walk, you pass a fulanica, the laundry you saw earlier. It is quiet now, the workers asleep, but the smell of urine is stronger in the damp night air. The tubs are sitting there fermenting. The waste doesn't sleep. You reach the edge of the Forum Romanum. At night, the heart of the empire is a ghostly place. The great temples are dark, their columns rising like the bars of a cage against the stars. The political shouting is over. The lawyers have gone home. The infrastructure is still working. You walk toward the Basilica Aemilia, near where the great sewer runs beneath the pavement. You can hear it before you see anything, a low, rushing sound like a subterranean river. The Cloaca Maxima is not just a pipe. It is a diverted river, the Spinney of the city. It carries the rain, the overflow of the aqueducts, and the sewage of the elite. You find a grate, a heavy stone slab with slots cut into it, set into the gutter. You kneel down and listen. The sound is powerful, a relentless gurgling torrent. The smell rising from the grate is complex. It is damp, earthy, and foul, but also strangely mineral. It smells of deep, wet stone. This drain was built by the Etruscan kings centuries ago, expanded by the Republic, and maintained by the emperors. It is the oldest continuously functioning organ of the city. You drop a pebble through the grate. You don't hear it hit the water. The rush is too loud. Down there in the dark, the city is purging itself. The water you bathed in, the wine you drank, the rain that fell on the roof, it is all rushing toward the Tiber. You stand up, your knees dirty from the street. You continue toward the riverbank. You want to see the outlet. You have to navigate carefully. The area near the river is unlit and treacherous. You pass the Forum Boreum again. The cattle market is empty of beasts, but the smell of blood and manure is baked into the soil. You see a shape moving in the shadows of the temple of Hercules, a homeless man, scavenging for scraps of meat or gristle left behind by the butchers. He freezes as you pass, eyes wide and reflecting the distant torchlight, looking like a wild animal. You give him a wide berth. In the ecology of the city, he is a scavenger, occupying a niche just above the rats. You reach the embankment of the Tiber. The river is a black, sliding oil slick, reflecting the scattered lights of the bridges. The noise here is different. It is the creaking of wood and the shouting of sailors. The night is when the barges move. You see a boat moored at the quay, low in the water. Men are unloading sacks of something grain, likely from Africa. They move in a rhythm, a human conveyor belt, tossing the heavy sacks from shoulder to shoulder. But further down, you see a different operation. A barge is being loaded, not with goods, but with rubble. This is a demolition crew. A building has collapsed, or perhaps been torn down to make way for a new monument. The debris-broken bricks, shattered tiles, splintered timber is being shoveled onto the barge. They are clearing the site by night to avoid blocking the streets by day. You watch a cloud of dust puff up as a load of plaster hits the deck. Where will it go? Some of it will be used as fill for new construction, leveling the ground. Some will be dumped in the marshes outside the city. Some will simply be tipped into the river further downstream. The city is constantly cannibalizing itself, tearing down the old to build the new, and the waste from this process is measured in tons. You are witnessing the metabolism of the city's architecture. You sit on a stone bollard, watching the dark water flow past. The Tiber is the final destination for everything. The stories say that Romulus and Remus were washed up on these banks. Now it washes up dead dogs, broken pots, and the effluvia of a million bowels. It is a sacred river, worshipped as a god, Tibernus, yet treated as a toilet. The contradiction is quintessentially Roman. They build temples to the water gods and then pipe their sewage into the stream. A cool breeze picks up, blowing off the water. It carries the scent of the sea miles away, mixed with the rot of the river mud. It cuts through the humidity for a moment, sending a shiver down your spine. You wrap your arms around yourself. The night is deepening. The blue hour is long gone. This is the dead of night, the intempesta nox, the time when no work can be done, technically, yet all around you work is happening. You look across the river to the Trastevere district on the other bank. It is a cluster of lights, densely packed, home to the immigrants, the Jews, the Syrians, the dock workers. It is a city within a city, with its own smells, its own trash, its own rules. You can hear faint music drifting across the water, the sound of a flute and a drum. Someone is celebrating, or perhaps mourning. You realize that you are thirsty. The walk and the dust have dried your throat. You turn away from the river and head back toward the city center, looking for a fountain. The public fountains run night and day, a constant gift of clean water from the distant hills. You find one near the Theater of Marcellus, a stone basin worn smooth by centuries of hands. You cup your hands under the spout. The water is ice cold, a shock to the system. It tastes of minerals and stone, pure and clean. It is a miracle. In a city of filth, this water is the one thing that remains undefiled until the moment it touches the basin. You drink greedily, splashing the excess on your face to wash away the soot of the roof. Refreshed, you begin the walk back to your insula. The traffic of carts seems to have thinned slightly, or perhaps you have just become desensitized to the rumble. The rhythm of the wheels has become the heartbeat of the night. You pass a bakery that is already opening its shutters, preparing to sell the first loaves to the early risers. The smell of fresh bread is intoxicating, cutting through the stench of the street. It is the smell of survival, of the daily renewal of life. You reach your street. The manure cart you saw earlier is gone, moved on to the next block. The air in the alley still holds the faint ghost scent of its passage, but the worst of the filth has been taken away. The system worked. The puticuli are empty, ready for another day of accumulation. You step over a sleeping dog at the entrance to your building and begin the climb back up the stairs. The stairwell is just as dark as before, but your legs are heavier now. You climb the flights, counting them off. First floor, second floor, third floor. You open your door and step back into the stifling heat of your room. It feels smaller now, after the vastness of the river and the sky. You strip off your tunic and lie back down on the straw mattress. The noise of the carts is still there, a dull roar in the background, but you are too tired to fight it now. You have seen the machine at work. You know now that the peace of the morning is purchased by the labor of the night. The clean street you will walk on tomorrow, relatively speaking, is the result of the sweat of the stercorari and the vigils. You close your eyes, letting the darkness take you. Your mind drifts from the image of the flowing sewer to the flowing river to the flowing crowds. It is all one circulation. You are just a particle in the stream. The rats are still scratching in the walls, but now they sound like companions rather than intruders. They are just trying to survive the night, same as you. As sleep finally begins to pull at the edges of your consciousness, a new sound emerges. It is faint, distant, but distinct. A rooster crowing. It is premature. The sun is hours away, but the bird senses the turn of the earth. The night shift is peaking, but the day is coming. The cycle is unbreakable. You sink into the straw, the heaviness of the air feeling like a blanket, and for a few hours you drift in the space between the waste of yesterday and the hunger of tomorrow. The darkness behind your eyes swirls with the afterimages of the night, the orange torchlight, the black water, the gray ash. You are safe in the anonymity of the city, hidden in the swarm. The smell of the room sweat, old wood, and the lingering scent of the chamber pot becomes familiar, almost comforting. It is the smell of home. It is the smell of life clinging to the stone. And as the rumble of the carts lulls you into a heavy, dreamless sleep, you realize that the trash of Rome is not just refuse. It is the footprint of civilization, the messy, stinking proof that a million people are dreaming together in the dark. The deep sleep finally breaks with the metallic clang of a bucket. You sit up instantly, adrenaline spiking, heart hammering in your chest. The sound is not from a cart in the street, but from the stairwell. You listen, the noise followed by the schluck-schluck of water being splashed onto stone. The early morning has arrived, and the cleaning process is beginning again. The light filtering through your small window is a weak, watery gray, the color of dirty river sand. The darkness has lifted, but the air is thick with a pre-dawn chill, the coldest hour before the sun crests the horizon. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed and reach for your sandals. The floorboards are damp, not from a spill, but from the condensation that settles on the colder surfaces during the night. The humidity that defines the city's air permeates everything. The first order of business, as always, is the chamber pot. You walk over to the corner, lift the lid, and the ammonia smell hits your nose sharp, chemical, and inescapable. It is a biological clock, dictating your first action of the day. You pick up the heavy vessel, its ceramic cool against your hand, and head out the door. The stairs are already slick. The porter of the building, or perhaps a hired slave, has begun the ritual washing. He uses the cheapest form of cleaner, water and a handful of wood ash, which acts as a mild, abrasive, and alkaline soap. The steps you descended last night are now wet, and you have to grip the wall to keep from slipping on the worn stone. The water collects in the corners, gray and foul, carrying the grime of the night down toward the street-level drainage. As you descend, you pass a man on the second floor leaving his door. He is carrying his own chamber pot. You exchange a weary glance, the communion of the early risers, and navigate around each other on the narrow landing. The shared hardship is a silent language. No words are needed to express the mutual distaste for this task. When you reach the ground floor and step into the courtyard, the air is still cool, but it smells strongly of wet plaster and wood smoke. You follow the established path to the street corner. The urine vat, emptied by the fuller's agent last night, is beginning to receive its first contributions of the day. You pour your contents into the vat, the splashing sound echoing slightly in the narrow alley. You empty the solids onto the small, designated heap nearby. You glance at the heap. It is already larger than it was when the Sterkerari took away last night's load. The city's production is relentless. You walk to the public fountain to rinse your pot. The water is a shock to your system, icy cold on your hands. The lion's mouth spout is already running vigorously. You scrub the pot with a handful of straw, scraping away the residue, and then rinse your hands. The water drains away instantly through the basin and into the street gutters, flowing toward the nearest drain grate. The sound of running water is the only truly soothing sound in Rome, a constant reminder of the incredible engineering that keeps this dense population alive. Pot clean, hands cold, you head back to your apartment. You have to prepare for the workday. As you climb the stairs, you are reminded of another piece of essential waste management, personal hygiene. You do not have a toothbrush. Romans clean their teeth using a few methods. Some use a rough linen cloth rubbed with a mixture of baking soda and powdered herbs. Others, wealthier Romans, use a compound made of pulverized mouse brains or burnt hart's horn mixed with resin. You, however, rely on the simplest and most accessible tool, a twig. You carry a small stick of mastic wood frayed at the end. When you get back into your room, you chew the end of the twig until it forms a rudimentary brush, and you rub it against your teeth and gums, occasionally dipping it in a cup of water to rinse. The flavor is bitter and slightly resinous, but it cuts through the grease and wine from last night's meal. You spit the residue out of the window, the last necessary contribution to the alley below. Before you leave for your job, you need a quick breakfast. You break off a chunk of the hard, stale bread you bought yesterday, a mix of whole wheat and barley, dark and dense. You hold the bread over a dish and scrape a small amount of salt onto it with your knife. This is your meal. It is dry and requires a lot of chewing, but it is fuel. You chase it with a cup of water from the jug you filled last night. The simplicity is stark. There is no fruit, no cheese, no egg. These luxuries are for the wealthy or the feast days. This coarse bread is the foundation of your survival. You step back out into the street. The sun has not yet appeared, but the sky is brightening rapidly, turning from gray to a pale, misty blue. The noise of the wagons is beginning to recede, replaced by the shout of vendors. The city is shifting back into its daylight rhythm. You need to traverse the central part of the city to reach your place of work near the Capitoline Hill. As you walk, you notice a distinct smell hovering over the pavement. It is a sweet, almost chemical odor that is instantly recognizable to any city dweller: sulfur. You look down and see the evidence. The pavement near the corner is stained black and white, and there is a cluster of dark, elongated shapes lying in the gutter. They are the remains of extinguished sulfur torches, used by pedestrians last night to light their way. The sulfur, often mixed with fat or resin, burns with a sickly yellow flame and gives off a pungent smell. It is a form of industrial waste that coats the streets every morning, scraped up by the early sweepers. The lingering scent of it mingles with the faint, persistent odor of the city's organic waste. As you walk past a large, closed shop, you notice the accumulation of packaging materials. The shop deals in imported luxury goods, silk, spices, perfumes. The owner has already swept the night's debris from his portico onto the street. It is a sizable mound of broken straw, woven wicker, rope fiber, and discarded sheets of parchment used for wrapping. The scale of the city's consumer packaging is enormous. Everything that comes into Rome is wrapped or contained in something that will be thrown away. You step around the pile. It will sit there until a municipal slave sweeps it into a heap for burning or for collection by the rag pickers. You pass the entrance to the great sewer again, the Cloaca Maxima, but this time during the transition from night to day. The sound of the rushing water is still loud, but now there is a new sound, the hammering of metal. A team of engineers and slaves is working on one of the sewer grates, lifting the heavy stone slab with levers. You pause to watch. Maintaining the sewer is a continuous, dangerous, and unpleasant job. The slaves are preparing to descend into the blackness below. The purpose of the grating is not just to allow water in, but to filter out the larger pieces of refuse that people throw into the street. You watch as a foreman, wearing a short leather tunic and a bandana over his nose, scoops up a handful of muck from the lip of the drain. It is a mixture of mud, bones, vegetable fiber, and pieces of broken pottery. He is checking for blockages. If the drain becomes clogged with debris that is too large, it can cause the sewage to back up into the streets, leading to immediate public health crises. The men are preparing to descend to clear a potential choke point. They will spend the morning waist deep in the flow, working by torchlight, navigating the tunnels built by kings centuries ago. The fact that the city's waste disposal is contingent on the physical labor of men working in tunnels filled with putrefaction is a humbling thought. Your own small contribution to the system, the rinse water from your pot, is now gurgling toward them. You move on, shaking the image from your mind. You reach a more prosperous area near the Circus Flaminius, where the housing is lower and the streets are wider. Here, the refuse is less dense but more specialized. You pass a small workshop belonging to a gemmarius, a gem cutter. The ground around his doorstep is sprinkled with a dust that catches the light, tiny, glittering fragments of quartz, amethyst, and obsidian. This is the waste of luxury, the micro-debris of the elite life. It will be swept up, not because it is a nuisance, but because some of the dust might be valuable enough to be resold. Further down, you reach the district of the tabernae, the small street-side shops. They are opening now, the wooden shutters being hauled up to reveal the goods inside. The cobbler is hammering a heel onto a sandal. The butcher is hanging a slab of pork on a hook. The smells are a rush of specific aromas: leather, blood, coal smoke, and cheap oil. You stop at a food stall that sells pools, a thick grain porridge that is the ancestor of modern polenta. You pay a coin and receive a bowl of the steaming, bland mush. You eat it standing up, using a wooden spoon. It is hot, heavy, and fills the hollow space in your stomach. As you eat, the vendor is already dealing with his cooking waste. He pours the used cooking water used to wash the grains and boil the vegetables into the gutter near the curb. It runs down the slope of the street, joining the other flows. You notice the gutter is already running a constant stream. In Rome, the gutters function as open drains. They are fed by overflowing fountains, street washings, and rainwater runoff. This flow is essential. It constantly dilutes and moves the debris that collects on the streets. Without this relentless stream of fresh water from the aqueducts, the streets would quickly become impassable. The clean water supply is not just for drinking and bathing. It is the fundamental engine of the city's waste management. You finish your pools, drop your wooden spoon into a barrel of water to be washed for the next customer, and wipe your mouth on the back of your hand. You are fueled for the day. You arrive at the construction site on the slope of the Capitoline Hill. You are a day laborer, working for a contractor who is building a new monumental arch dedicated to the latest military victory. The site is a churned chaos of dirt, stone, and labor. The noise is immense, the sound of chisels on marble, the grinding of the crane, the shouts of the foremen. Your job begins with moving material. You join a line of men hauling baskets of excavated earth from the foundation trenches. The dirt is heavy, damp, and smells of old growth and deep history. But mixed into the dirt are the fragments of Rome's past. Every shovel load brings up something: a piece of broken roof tile, a shard of black pottery from the Republic, a corroded bronze coin from a century ago, a piece of bone. This is the archaeological record being destroyed in real time. The contractor doesn't care about history. He cares about a firm foundation. The excavated soil is loaded onto donkey carts. You watch as a foreman picks up a broken oil lamp from the pile. It is a beautifully molded terracotta piece, showing a scene of a gladiator fight. He looks at it for a moment, then shrugs and tosses it into the basket with the dirt. It is garbage. It is historical evidence. It is one and the same. The dirt is hauled to a ramp and dumped, not into a cart, but onto an already growing mound near the edge of the forum. This is construction waste, and it is a mountain in itself. City permits this temporary landfill. The goal is to level a low-lying area near the river. The detritus of one era, the collapsed buildings, the forgotten foundations, the historical artifacts becomes the ground layer for the next. You are physically building the layers of history that future generations will dig through. You spend the morning in this repetitive, dusty labor. The sun is now fully up, burning through the mist. The heat is returning. You feel the grit of the dirt against your sweat-slicked skin. Your throat is dry and your muscles ache. The work is relentless, broken only by the need for water, which is brought to the site in leather wineskins and poured into a communal metal cup. At the 6th hour, the noon break arrives. The work stops instantly. The silence is sudden and deafening. You collapse onto a pile of discarded limestone chips. You pull out the piece of coarse linen that you use for a napkin and your second piece of dry bread. You eat slowly, letting your heart rate drop. Around you, the other laborers are eating their own meager meals, talking in low voices. An argument breaks out nearby. Two men are fighting over a piece of rope that was tossed away by the crane operator. One man claims he found it first. The other says it was already in the refuse pile. The rope is valuable. It can be sold to a rag picker, used as a binding, or unraveled for its fibers. They eventually split the rope, a testament to the fact that nothing in this city, not even refuse, goes unclaimed. You look at the construction site one last time before going back to work. You see the broken wood scaffolding, the splintered planks, the chipped marble slabs. All of it is waste, waiting to be processed. The timber will be scavenged for firewood. The marble chips will be sold to lime burners to be crushed and burned for cement. The stone itself will not die. It will be transformed. You pick up a piece of discarded parchment, a rough draft of an architect's plan, crumpled and tossed away. You smooth it out, looking at the faded ink drawing of an impossibly grand portico. It is beautiful, a vision of abstract planned perfection. You turn it over and use it to wipe the sweat from your forehead. Then you crumple it up and toss it into a heap of sawdust. It is waste now, destined to be burned. You have just used the rejected blueprint of the future to wipe the grime from your face in the present. It is the final, strange irony of the day. The afternoon beckons, and the eternal, dusty work of Rome continues. The sexta is over. The sun has begun its slow, deliberate slide toward the western hills, and the shadows are once again lengthening, stretching the familiar shapes of the Forum and the monuments into distorted, gaunt silhouettes. The heat, which had been a crushing weight at midday, has become a dry, irritable presence, baking the dust and emphasizing the odors of the street. You are done with the excavation for the day, your arms aching from the repetitive action of the shovel, your skin coated in a fine, ochre-colored dust that smells of ancient earth and pulverized limestone. The foreman dismisses the crew with a wave of his hand and a promise of payment at the end of the week. You wipe the sweat from your brow, leaving a streak of clean skin on your dusty face, and look around. The construction site is already being cleaned up. Slaves are stacking the planks of scaffolding, gathering the discarded tools and sweeping the worksite. But the sweepings are not collected. They are simply pushed into the corner of the lot, a pile of sawdust, stone chips, and the inevitable broken pottery. It is the end-of-day dumping ritual. The cleanup is mostly cosmetic, pushing the mess out of the way for the next shift. You head away from the noise of the worksite, moving toward the Palatine Hill. You are seeking a friend, a man named Aulus who works as a low-level clerk in the public records office, a man who knows the invisible administrative processes that keep the city running. As you walk, you pass an open square where a group of fulons, the laundry workers, are laying out washed tunics to dry. The fabric is starkly white, bleached by the urine and the sun, a clean flag waving over the dirty city. But the square itself is soaked. The wash water, a disgusting gray slurry of stale urine, fuller's earth, and bodily dirt, has been emptied onto the paving stones. The fullers are now using brooms to sweep the foul liquid into the gutter. You skirt the edge of the puddle, the sickly sweet sharp smell of the washing process hitting you like a physical blow. You realize that this is a critical moment in the waste cycle. They have converted personal filth into public environmental hazard. But the city needs clean clothes. The demand for white togas is inexhaustible. The cost of that demand is the fouling of the public squares, a necessary compromise of urban life. You turn a corner and suddenly, the street is much cleaner. You are on the edge of a wealthy neighborhood, and the difference is immediate. The paving stones are less clogged with mud and refuse. The stench is still present, for smell travels, but it is less concentrated. You notice that the gutters here are better maintained, cleared of blockages, and running a faster stream of water. The houses themselves are built of brick faced with marble, standing 2 stories high, built solidly, without the rickety, gravity-defying height of the insulae. The trash here is different. You see less organic matter and more industrial refuse. Broken pieces of colorful mosaic tile, discarded metal fittings, and crucially, less human waste on the street. Why? Because the houses of the wealthy are often connected directly to the sewer system. Their latrines, called forici domestici, sit over a small drain that flushes directly into the cloaca maxima below. The problem of the chamber pot is solved indoors, a luxury paid for by the cost of the plumbing. You pause in front of a particularly large house with an elaborate bronze door knocker. A slave emerges from the service entrance, carrying a wooden bucket. You watch him closely. He walks to a small, lidded stone pit set into the ground near the street. He lifts the lid and empties the bucket, which contains kitchen slops, vegetable trimmings, meat scraps, and a few broken plates. This is the domestic refuse bin. It is a dry disposal pit, or fossa, which will be emptied manually at regular intervals, and the contents taken outside the city. The wealthy manage their waste meticulously because they can afford the labor and the proximity to their marble homes demands it. They pay to push the problem away from their immediate environment. You find Aulus in his office, a cramped, dusty room behind a larger government building. The room smells of old papyrus, beeswax, and stale incense. He is hunched over a scroll, copying out an ordinance. He looks up, sees the grime on your face, and winces. "You look like you've been buried and dug up again," he says, not unkindly. "Just building a triumphal arch," you reply. "It seems we're building it on top of a 300-year-old rubbish heap." Aulus smiles, a slight downturn of the lips. "That's Rome, always building its future on the back of its past failures. You know, you are a part of a very interesting economy, my friend. We just passed a new decree concerning the stercorari, the official manure collectors." You lean against the doorframe, interested. "What about them? They were busy last night." "They are getting too rich," Aulus says, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "The soil outside the gates is exhausted, and the demand for good fertilizer is immense. The stercorari have formed a kind of guild, driving up the price of night soil. They pay a small fee to the city for the right to collect, but they resell the manure at exorbitant rates to the hortolani, the market gardeners. The gardens around the city are literally built on the feces of Rome, and the men who control it are now richer than some of the senators." He taps the scroll. "The emperor wants to regulate the price. It's a logistical problem. If the fertilizer price gets too high, the price of vegetables rises and the plebs get angry. It's all connected. Your chamber pot, the farmer's profit, the stability of the empire. Trash is power." You thank him for the information. The idea that the contents of your chamber pot could influence imperial politics is a jarring reminder of the complex web of the city. You leave him to his dusty work, the smell of papyrus clinging to your tunic, and head back out into the late afternoon light. The air is cooling perceptibly now, and the golden hour is beginning. You feel the weariness of the full day of physical labor setting in. Your feet hurt, and the dust is itching your scalp. You decide to treat yourself to a visit to a public bath, a smaller local one this time, to repeat the ritual of cleansing and thermal shock. As you walk, you pass a street vendor selling small terracotta figurines, votive offerings for the various gods. But he is also selling something else, used oil lamps. He has a pile of them on a blanket. They are cracked, the nozzles broken, the clay stained with soot. They are essentially trash, but he is offering them for a few quadrants each. They are not to be used as lamps, they are to be broken up. You ask him why. He explains that they are excellent material for filling the hollow spaces in new masonry. The small, curved fragments of the terracotta provide good structural filler and are much cheaper than new brick. He is turning aesthetic waste into structural necessity. This is the constant, low-level genius of Rome, the ceaseless repurposing of every broken thing. Nothing is allowed to be simply useless. You finally reach the local bathhouse, a small, independent venture run by a Greek freedman. It is less grand than the baths of Agrippa, but cleaner because the clientele is smaller. You pay your fee, repeat the ritual of oil, sweat, and strigil, and settle into the warm water of the tepidarium. You close your eyes, letting the mineral heat soak into your muscles. You listen to the sounds of the room, the gentle splashing, the low, unintelligible murmur of conversation. You think back over the day, the sheer volume of material you have seen move and accumulate, the mountains of pot shards, the streams of sewage, the piles of construction rubble, the bags of valuable bone and rag, the tons of night soil. It is a city that is constantly on the edge of collapse, perpetually saved by its own relentless metabolism. The aqueducts bring life, and the sewers take away the waste. The stercorari haul away the night, and the vigils fight the fire. The bronze smith melts the scrap, and the potters break the shards. Every citizen, from the emperor who decrees the price of fertilizer to the scavenger who picks a bone from the gutter, is a part of this vast, intricate waste machine. The ultimate conclusion is not one of disgust, but of awe. This is the infrastructure of an empire, supported not just by legions and laws, but by a logistical genius for dealing with its own detritus. The sheer endurance required to live in such close, dirty proximity without destroying each other or succumbing to disease is a marvel of human tenacity. The sun is finally gone now. The room is growing dim. You climb out of the pool, feeling lighter, cleaner, and immensely tired. You make your way through the cold room and back to the changing area. You dress quickly, pulling your tunic over your damp skin. As you exit the bathhouse, the city is once again transitioning to night. The street vendors are lighting their small lamps. The carts are beginning to rumble again in the distance. The cycle is beginning its nightly revolution. But for the next few hours, you are clean. The layer of dust, oil, and sweat has been washed away, leaving you feeling momentarily refreshed, ready to face the long evening. You decide to eat dinner at a Copona, a small tavern that also offers cheap rooms. You order a simple stew cabbage and beans, thick and nutritious, and a cup of resin-laced wine. You eat sitting at a rough wooden table in the back corner. The tavern is dimly lit, the shadows deep and comforting. You watch the man sitting at the next table. He is wearing the rough, patched tunic of a common laborer. He is eating quietly, methodically, focusing on his bowl. He finishes his meal, wipes the bowl clean with a chunk of bread, and then signals for the innkeeper. He pays, nods, and leaves. He did not drop a single scrap of food onto the floor. In his world, a dropped bean is a catastrophe, an unimaginable waste. You finish your own stew, scraping the last of the thick broth with your bread. You are careful to consume everything. You place your empty bowl on the counter and pay your few coins. The landlord immediately washes your bowl in a bucket of water behind the counter, using a rag that looks perpetually greasy. The water from the bucket will be tossed into the street outside. You leave the Copona and begin the final, long walk back to the Subura. The night is dark and the air is getting colder, carrying the moisture from the Tiber and the residual smoke from the kitchens. As you walk the familiar route, dodging the slow-moving wagons, you feel the dust of the day settling back onto your freshly washed skin. It is an unavoidable fact of life. You can never truly escape the dirt. You reach your insula, climbing the dark, familiar stairs. The air inside the building is cooler now than it was at midnight, the temperature finally dropping. You reach your room, shut the door, and light your oil lamp. The small flame casts warm, shaky shadows on the walls. You look at the chamber pot in the corner. It is clean and empty, waiting patiently for the night's production. You realize that your entire existence, your entire day, has been a loop, from the contents of the pot in the morning to the anticipation of its use at night. It is the beginning and the end of the daily rhythm. You take off your tunic. You lie down on the straw mattress and pull the wool blanket up to your chin. The sounds of the night are rising again, the rumble of the wagons, the shout of a vigil, the distant bark of a dog. You are clean, fed, and dry. You are surviving. You close your eyes. You feel the vast, living, breathing city around you, a city built on its own trash, its own endless consumption. The empire endures not in marble, but in the dirty, daily logic of removal and reuse, in the silent, back-breaking work of the men who shovel the filth and mend the broken pieces. You are a small, anonymous part of that massive, self-sustaining system. And as sleep finally pulls you under, you listen to the rumble of the carts, carrying away the trash of the world, and you realize that even in the ultimate darkness, the great, slow, dirty engine of history is still turning.